Well, good evening, good morning, and good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Good to see you. I'm glad you're here. I am your Griot, and here we are. Here we are on our channel, Dreamy Dream Land with Sensei Al Bob, and I am your sensei. And tonight, mm, what it is? What is it? It is things. I spent a nice afternoon with a friend, and he's the counselor, and I'm the rabbi. And he's about, I don't know, probably 10, 15 years older than me, but we come from the same time period. And he's not from, we're both are what are known as belongers, meaning we belong to this community, and we have for, he's been here 40 years. I've been only here 20, maybe 50 years. I'm not quite, he got here in the 70s. And so he ran for Supreme Court judge, I think. And so he's popular, but he's not, one of, we're what is known as belongers. I mean, we've been here a long time, so we kind of belong here, but we didn't come from here. We're not one of them. But he didn't become a judge, so he has his practice, and he's like a mix of Perry Mason and Matlock, right? And he's a pretty sharp guy. So anyway, we get along because he's pretty well read. He looks at things like I do, outside the little box of their folks' little lives here, and he tries to help people. So he does a very good job at that, and like I said, he's probably somewhere between 80 and 90. He's still going. And I go into town that he's in, and I go into his office, see if he's there, and if he is, and it's around lunchtime, he will take me to lunch, and there's this place across the street from his office that they got seats out on the main drag, and if it's spring or sunny or warm, we'll sit out there, and it's quite nice because people walk by and everybody knows him, and they stop and they talk to him, and it's like he's the bishop, and people kiss the ring. And even though they're the guys who own the bank, and you know all the people who think they're powerful, he's really one person that people respect in that town, or one of them, and because he doesn't let people down. Whereas the politicians, the elected officials, all the people who run things, they're always like sticking it in their pocket. And if you go to xratted.blogspot.com, the story, same as it ever was, it's not kind of what's going on in this town. It's like what's going on in every little town. So anyway, so he's in there. Let's see if we can pick him out. And he's one of the heroes, and he makes a cameo show, and I always change the names to protect the innocent. So, but anyway, we were there's a sports bar that he likes to go to, and so they make nice wings there. So we go there, and he buys me a beer and maybe a few wings. And there's some really interesting. He likes that place because it's got interesting people in it, right? And his wife likes to come and then go shopping. And so she's they're a very beautiful couple. And I think they've been married forever. And she's a really smart girl from that town. And so, you know, she could have been a lawyer, but she'd much rather just let him be the lawyer, and she runs everything. And so they're an interesting couple. They're interesting folks to hang out with. They're loads of fun. They're very funny. They got a great sense of humor. So anyway, today it's just him and me eating wings and having cocktails. And in that bar, there are a lot of interesting people, right? Because it's a college town, and a lot of people come in and out, and so anyway, and like again, he's really well respected, and people know me long enough to know who I am, and so being his good friend, everyone goes, well, we know Al, and yeah, he's that, but he's also this guy's better good friend, and that puts a whole nother spin to, anyway, long story short, won't go into the riffraff of the going on so far. It's the tri-counties. And so, and like I said, where I live, he doesn't live where I live, but where I live, I'm like in the midst of Appalachian poverty, but I'm way far away from anybody. I'm way far away, from the hubbub. But still, it's not like forever away. I'm like, between 20 and 40 miles to the different major points in the tri-counties. And like I said, I've been there for 20 years. So in those three counties, I've been involved in a lot of stuff, not just my one little county, but all the way around. So, and I know guys like this guy in each county. And anyway, so we were in there talking, and he's like, he's not particularly a Democrat or Republican, but he has his comments about, the because it's, within the political structure he is. Anyway, so we were talking about, the carrot head, and basically, I'm always looking for the positive spin, not to spin the moron's point of view, but to see the big picture of, okay, this is what's happening. It looks catastrophic. I mean, really, if you look at the president, so we were talking about everything. We were talking about, Barr and I mean, just, the carrot head and the economics, and as his wife is more she worked in banks and was, state economic type of person. And so yeah, we've always been talking about all this stuff. And what's in the tri-counties that's quite interesting. There's this group of very interesting, this used to be in the Garden of Paradise, so it's a vegetable place, and then Monsanto came in and destroyed it. Really Bayer came in and destroyed it. And it showed how there's a little teeny, farm neck of the woods, and a large transnational corporation comes in the 1970s and just kind of destroys everything, whatever their freaking, big plan is. So I'm constantly talking about the hidden hand and the powers that shouldn't be, and the sock puppets and the usual suspects. And he can see all that, but he goes, why are they doing this? Tell me, why are they, how can they make money? If they're going to destroy the world, how are they going to make any money? Who's going to be in good, and he won't, and this is the problem I have trying to explain to a lot of people, the bigger picture of, so they can see, people like Rothschild and Rockefeller and Morgan and Ford and Edison and then the morons, like Bill Gates and the morons of the banking world and all of that. And he can see the corruption. He can see, what's going on. He also is a student of history enough to see the continuity that this isn't the first time all of this, people think, oh, it's so terrible. No, this is like same as it ever was. And that's why that story that I wrote, same as it ever was, but don't believe anything I say, on xratted.blogspot. It keeps going, I keep trying to find your thing, and I just keep getting porno. I said, that's because you're not adding another T. It's XRATTED. And he's, oh. And he is on his phone. Oh, yeah, there it is. And that's why I did it, because it's, X-rated. But it's really X-rated. When you read it, it's X-rated, but when you just put the X over here and then ratted, you get the real picture. And the X is for the unknown that's right in front of you. And the ratted is, the rats, right? But when you put the X and the ratted together, it's X-rated. So, and that's how I write stuff. It's right in your face, but it's kind of little taken apart. And everything's a metaphor. My spelling's a metaphor, my grammar's a metaphor, everything's a metaphor. It means something else, because that's what our life is. It's right in front of our faces. So anyway, my friend and I are talking about all of this, and I keep saying, I'm trying to find this alternative to what's going on, and until that can happen, it's just going to keep going on and on and on. The same kind of X-ratted, crap is going to keep going on. And usually the bar around that, I got there around 4. And by that time, the working crew, who they kind of saunter in starting around 3. And by about 4, there's at least 5 to 10 people in there. By 5 or 6, and then there's about 30 people in there, and it's loud, and a zillion TVs and pool. And anyway, but I'm looking there, and there's just the bartender, the manager, who's off in the back. I see kind of walking around. And my buddy, he got there first. Then I rolled in, and there was a truck driver, a guy over here, and he's listening to us talk. And that's all that's there. And the bartender, she's listening to us to talk because she knows us. And so she's, she's just graduated college student. She's a ski instructor, and she's trying to figure out, what she should do with her life. And my buddy and I are always like giving her, I read her, anyway. So she listens to us and scratches her head. And conversation, which is, I'm always up for that. It's just like the live chat. The two of you can comment anytime you want. And I'd love it if one of you did that showed that we can actually chat. But anyway, a truck driver popped in and he said, well, it's not about money. It's not about power. It's not about getting anything. It's about experience. Our lives are about experience to manifest the best part of our soul. And my friend looks at him, and he understands that for the last, 18 years, I've been trying to say that to my boyfriend there, and he's understood it, but he's always, parsing it out in the politics and the money and the power and the this and that. And he understands what I'm talking about, but he just thinks that's what I talk about all the time. But here's this guy that neither of us know who, and I go, what's your name? And he tells me, and he says, Ray. And I said, you're a ray of light. He goes, yep, I'm a ray. And I said, what do you do? He says, I'm just a truck driver. So here's a guy who's just a truck driver who says one of the more profound things I've heard, that's something I have faith in. He's basically talking about love's, co-creation of our soul of the artist in the first person, the Aborigines, the savage. And he starts talking about the savage. So this guy I said, so you ever watch, who I am? No. You ever watch, Jamie, what's that? And I give him a card. I said, it's my YouTube channel. You should go check it out. But he is actually, so here's a guy who's just a truck. I said, so what's your education? In high school, and he has got it, in his own way. But he basically said, we're only here to have experience, to ascend our soul to a better place. I couldn't send it any better. So that's what I should have named this show, Duality. And that's the duality that's going on. And a friend of one of the cadre basically left a message on my the dude awake 42 at Gmail. You want to get a hold of me or people want to talk about something personal. So this person basically said, well, I haven't been able to because of my work schedule, and I'm living on the other side of the planet, my time thing with you isn't quite on the weekends. I can kind of watch your live chat and be part of it, but during the work week, it's like you're doing it like at 5 a.m, haven't gotten up, or while I'm at work, one or the other, and so I've kind of missed being on the chat. I said, oh, no problem. But one of our cadres said, but what's truly amazing is I've been having dreams, and then I watch, I can watch the show. I just can't be part of the chat. And the last 2 weeks, all of my dreams have been about what your shows have been about the day before you do the show. And that's like the duality. That's happening more and more around me. So I was just, before I go on the show here, I kind of, go on this and that and watch a little TV to just see what the world is into, right? And that's what I'm seeing, that there's this duality because politically and economically, if you look at the world, it's going to hell on a handbasket, but it always has. But it's so dualistic, meaning the political structure that put the carrot head in power is spinning this, and then he lies, and in the process of him lying, he is telling the truth about the duality of how the usual suspect powers that shouldn't be are spinning it. And so it's right in front of you, this duality. You can't let you watch, MSNBC, CNN, and Fox. This duality is going on, and you're, I'm not, the smartest chimpanzee in the box, but I'm going, whoa, look at this. That's really amazing. Then all of the stuff I'm looking up on YouTube, I have this stream that people send me stuff that's pretty, out of the ordinary. And what is this guy? Clear Thinking or something like that. I'll get his name, but he has been really very good. He's like anal retentive rocket scientist, right? He's a software engineer. It's semi-retired, but back in the day, he used to do some pretty cutting-edge stuff for everybody, right? Corporations, military, government. So he's pretty locked in. I mean, he's kind of like me, coming from the point of computers and software and stuff like that. So he still does operating systems for people and software patches and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, so through that, he has exposure to what's going on with the novel coronavirus 19 in China, right? And so he's, so he's one of the first guys who said, hey, this is a, military, weapon, a biological weapon, right? And because he's done software for certain people who are in the know of that, and so they've been in communication with him. He has people in China that he's worked for different corporations, and So he's in kind of contact with them, and he's seeing like the Chinese basically they were aware of what was going on, but they thought it was going to be like SARS. So 800 people die. Who cares? Um, and so instead of disrupting their business, they just went on for 17 weeks. They had 17 weeks. And around October, they were kind of getting this doctor who was an ophthalmologist said, "Hey, there's something going on because one of the man, if this virus is around you, you should never touch your face. Period. You know." And he started seeing this virus kind of affecting people's eyes. And and he was talking about if you wanted to test people to see, forget trying to take their blood, look at their eyes, and they're not doing that. So, what is this guy's name? His name is right on the tip of my tongue. If I know where. Oh, here's my book. Did I write it down? Let's see if I wrote it down. Because he is quite good. So he wrote down chaga, CHAGA mushrooms are the one. There's this herbalist he knows in China who has been giving old people. He's a doctor, and so he takes care of people, and he's in Hunan, and he had a number of patients who were old that had problems with their heart and their blood and their this and that. These are people who would die right away, but he had them on the chaga mushrooms. None of them got sick, and people in their apartment bill all got sick. But they didn't get sick, right? And what's this guy's name? Critical Thinking is his show. So if you go on YouTube, look for Critical Thinking. There's a show. Did I write down his name? No, I didn't. I think it's Phil or something like that. But Critical Thinking. So that's a very good show. If you want to know what's kind of going on about the virus, he's right on. He's like at least 7 days ahead of whatever you might hear from anybody else. The other guy, the Link Project, the guy I find annoying. But, once in a while, I would say every third show he does, he kind of, the people he brings on, he kind of hits it. He's kind of like Joe Rogan in that Joe Rogan, I still can't get past the point of Joe Rogan's career as the host of Fear Factor. So I take everything with a grain of salt from Joe Rogan, but he gets some amazing guests and he is quite a good interviewer because instead of trying to show that he is the groove dude, he says relatively quiet while his guest, who you should be listening to, talks. So he gets some pretty interesting people and he gives them the time and space to say whatever they want to say. And his thing is he's a lot like Art Bell. And Art Bell was on the radio. He did a show called Dream. No, he called it Coast to Coast, right? And he was coming from Pahrump, which is just outside of where the flying saucers went down. And so there's a lot of information out there, but it's all in this dualistic kind of thing. One person says this, another person says that, and you have to and another person was talking to me on her or his, and I can't even tell what gender most of the people who were on the chat and who addressed me on the my Dude Awake 42 Gmail account, and that's okay, Anyway, this person was going on about how since they've been watching me, they stop using their brain and they're using their gut, not just their heart. They've seen that the heart is the CPU, the central process. That's where everything should get processed, not up here, but in your heart. He says, I'm starting to think with my heart, but everything's coming from my gut. And I, told them, well, that makes sense because all those little guys in your gut, you've got billions of these little, guys, and they are separate entities in your gut. And they have a consciousness and they have a collective consciousness. So you got like a billion little creatures in your gut eating all the crap in your colon and processing it for you, thus allowing the lining of your, sphincter and colon and that, 32 feet of what, your intestines that absorb all that stuff. It only happens because these little creatures in your gut is breaking the shit down, right? And then turning it into proteins that your body can absorb. And different foods, process different ways. And, if you eat really crappy processing food, it kind of clogs up those guys. But anyway, that's where all of your real thought process comes from is your gut. And so they were talking about how since they've been watching Dreamy Dreamland, they've changed in that they no longer use their head, they use their heart and their gut, right? And when you do that, that is when this duality becomes, this two-way mirror, and you can start to get perspective, right? So that's what it is. Perspective is what it is. So here I'm at this bar, and this truck driver is listening to me and my, so my buddy, instead of being Mutton Chef, he's a counselor, and I'm the rabbi. Whenever we go in this bar, people, oh, God, that's what we got named, the counselor and the rabbi, because whenever the bar is having a conversation, he is always coming from the point of law, because he's a lawyer instead of a liar. And so that's why he's a counselor rather than a lawyer. He's a counselor, right? And people in the bar have made that distinction and call him the counselor. And I'm the rabbi. They always say, you're talking like a rabbi, And I said, do you know any Jewish people? How do you know how a rabbi? So, but so that's where we got our, nicknames from, uh, you know. And don't believe a word I said, and I am just your griot telling you a story. These people don't even exist. I made them up, So anyway, so the truck driver, there's just the four of us, the bartender and me, my buddy, and the truck driver. And so we started having this pretty amazing conversation. And the bartender, like, she's about 25, 20, whatever age you are when it's the year after you graduated college. And she's trying to figure out what to do. And she said she was going to make up her mind by, her, she's going to leave town, or I don't know, make up her mind. I don't know if she's leaving her town, but, by July. Right. So anyway, she's listening and she keeps, asking us good questions, just like the live chat has good statements and very interesting questions. And there's only two of you guys here, and it's 28 minutes, heading towards 30. So nobody wants to make a comment? Come on. So anyway, so he's talking about we're only here. It's not about money. It's not about politics. It's not about power. It's not about any of those things. It's about experience. And so I asked the bartender, so what's your experience? And she goes, I haven't lived enough. I said, come on, you're how old? She's like 20, like I said, 25, 26, 27. And I said, man, by the time I was your age, I had like, 5 different lives. And she goes, yeah, but that's you. And nobody's, you've shown me your photo books, because I'm living in my car. And when I'm talking to somebody and they would go, oh, I'll go in my car and bring out one of my photo books. And I said, yep, here's this. Here's me in the Aliens. Here's me with Jimmy Carter. Here's me with Richard Nixon. Here's me with, And so she goes, I've read your stories on your X-rated. And she looked at my, my buddy and she goes, but how could you not, Counselor? How can you? He's. I don't know how many. I see him every time giving you one of his cards. It's right there, and she goes, but it's so small. And she goes, well, put on your glasses anyway. So, and I gave him another card, and he's looking at it. He goes, oh yeah, there's two T's there. So she's going. You've had like five lives before you became even my age. And I said, yeah. So how come you are not at least having two or three? And I said, but the other side of the point is you ski better than I ever could. And she goes, yeah, but you're a better electrician than I ever will be. It's anyway. So we had this. So we're having, and that was the interesting thing about this conversation. It was the four of us, and we were speaking up at different points, but making this one conversation. That was quite interesting. And the manager, often in his office back there, kept like yelling out something every now and then. So it's quite an interesting um, um, little conversation for about an hour and a half. And she had to go, and I have to always get home before it gets dark. I can't drive when it gets dark 30. As long as it's a little light, I can drive. Because I have to wear my sunglasses to drive because they're the only ones that are in the prescription for me to drive. These are my reading glasses. And my driving glasses are sunglasses, dark. Because I get real, when I drive during the day, the brightness gets my eyeballs out. So, anyway, that's the real interesting thing I wanted to talk about today is the duality because all these things are going on. The 19 virus, and our economy goes, oh, I'm making more jobs than ever, blah blah blah. In reality, not so much, because between '08, when George W. and Dick Cheney destroyed our economy, because you have to remember when Bill Clinton left office and Al Gore won the election, but lost it in again the electoral college. So that's happened twice in less than 15 years. People should realize there's something wrong with the system, right? And the only person who's really talking about fixing the system is Bernie and Tassie Gabbard, And what might be interesting is if Bernie were to announce, the next time they have one of those debates, he should say, when it's his time to speak, before they really get into the debates, listen, I'm going to make an announcement here. I am naming my cabinet right now. It's me, and I want Tassie Gabbard to be my vice president. I want Ralph Nader to be my attorney general. I want Christopher Hitchens to be what would he be good for? Head of HUD. I'd like to see who would make a good Secretary of State. Name his cabinet with really interesting people, scholars, people from all different, Republicans, Democrats. Oh, Mitt Romney. Make Mitt Romney the Secretary of State. Mitt would be pretty good at that. Who else? I would think of some other folk, but Cornel West. I wouldn't put him in charge of education, right? And the guy who wrote the book, Me Against the World, and he wrote that essay in a magazine about reparations, right? I would make him head of you know, HUD, or I would find really interesting people. And if Bernie did that and said, these are the people, and they're all gonna, develop their thing, and we're gonna talk about that, and every time I have a neighborhood counts, the talk where you interview me, I'm gonna have all those people, so you can ask them about all the things that we're going to do to change the government, right? And that would be this dualistic thing of, hey, we're putting forth a real way of dealing with your problems, putting forth how are we going to look at stuff, what's really going on, what is happening. And you go up against a carrot head who can barely pick his nose, and it would be very self evident because it already is. I mean, what did Carrot Head do before he became president? He was a TV game show host because that's what that show was. The Apprentice was a game show. And what did he do for that whole 8 or so years he had that show? All he did was, you're fired, right? Now, he has done the same thing in our government. He fired everybody in all those different bureaus. He fired everyone in the energy department, fired everyone in the EPA, fired everyone. He has broken the system, right? So you take that guy and put him up against Bernie, who's got all these other people who's like, it's great that because before you can fix a sick system, you have to break it, and that was what I kind of did in my little career of, when I was in the corporate world. And the two things I did in the corporate world was being a demographer, looking at trends, and being a negotiator for the corporate desperate lawyers. So, and both of those things, I would break whatever we were looking at so we could rebuild it into something better, right? When I worked for the traffic light company, I basically would go in because I'd be the first guy in, and I put those little rubber hoses and I would break and I would go and see how that municipality was running their traffic lights to begin with, right? And I would, because they were already trying to figure patterns and algorithms and all of that stuff, but in a very broken way, because they would use that, the system. When did you last put in a new system in your traffic lights? Oh, 1972. So everything was analog, but they were trying to describe it in a digital way. So it just couldn't fit the round peg into the square hole. So you'd have to break it to fix it. And that's kind of where we're at in America. And not just America, but the planet, and we have to, so when Bernie calls himself a, socialist Democrat, man, that's the stupidest thing he could, that's like old, like 19th century terminology, and no one can, what are you, he's a commie, no. And people come, how much single payer healthcare is going to cost? It's going to cost $10 trillion over 10 years. Well, we basically spend $1 trillion a year in the tax write-offs that we gave to the richest people on the, in the world, and the corporations. And, they're going, we're going to have to cut some of these entitlements. Well, no. Social Security is not an entitlement. Everyone's paid for it because they take it out of your paycheck. It's like a retirement savings plan. It's not an entitlement. It's same with Medicare. It's not an entitlement, right? And the only real reason it's still going, we spend more money. We spend close to $1 trillion on healthcare already, but it goes into the pockets of the corporations. And so people think, well, they're not, wow, if I'm not going to get my health care from the insurance plan. I'm not going to get it. No, Bernie's saying, I'm going to give you everything, Right now, my Medicaid or Medicare, I can never figure out which one is which one's for the old people. But anyway, I just barely get through the door with my Medicaid card, It's like, what? So anyway, everything's in a dualistic point of view. We have to break it, so, and that's what, that's the blessing of the carrot-headed pinhead, is that he's breaking everything. He's destroying everything. And that was, the dynamic of guys like Dick Cheney and Steve Bannon and Rumsfeld. Those guys have been around since the 70s, right? And they basically, came in, got into power, saw what it was, and realized they had to break it to fix it. Whereas guys like Nixon was trying to just keep the system going because he was like from the 40s, right? Kennedy, he was like a little ahead of the curve. So he thought if he could just do this rather than break it, he could do an FDR, right? Keep it going for another 100 years, right? And do better for the general public. And that's why he wanted to do the Star Trek. He wanted to be Gene Roddenberry because he was out there in, when he got busted up in his PT boat and they brought him back, the war was still going on. He was still in the Navy, but he was, his father was very well connected. He was, the guy representing America in England, and he was Irish. He was our representative of the court of King James, and he's Irish. That's like big stuff. So Jack realized, okay, I'm going to do something here. So he goes to Europe after Germany falls, and the interesting thing, the army surrendered, right? But the Reich never did. They just went someplace else, right? They were transnational, almost trans-universal, meaning they were not just talking about taking over this, they were taking over everything, our solar system. They were already out there. People don't realize they were on the friggin' moon, in the 30s, because when they sent those guys to check out Antarctica, they got down into, central, they found this cavern that went down and found an underground world down there that, was being heated. It was like being in Bermuda because they had all these steam vents, and they found ancient technology, right? And they brought some of it back, and they brought some of the smartest people there to look at it, and they built, a facility there because the facility was already there. All they had to do was open up the cavern so the submarines could get in there. And again, don't believe a word I say. This is all just a story for your entertainment. It's just entertainment. But there's tons of books about this, right? And, a good place to start with all this is Joseph P. Farrell's books, and he's written a ton of them. He's probably has at least 30 books by now. And he has a really good book called Switch, which is a really good picture of this duality and how, with the death of Kennedy, if Kennedy hadn't got assassinated, he would have two terms. We had not gone into Vietnam. We would have disclosed by this time, by 1963, we had already perfected zero-point energy. We had already perfected zero gravomagnetic propulsion. And those two things would give us superabundance. We'd have all the energy we'd ever need, never have to burn another, chunk of coal or oil or anything. all those people who held power by pushing our economy based on oil would have been out, and that means the CIA. And the CIA would have been out. We would have basically, after the missile crisis in Cuba, the Russians were ready to, hey, let's step back from this, and they could have had, the end of the Iron Curtain in '64, right? And if he did that, boy, he would have been. If he could have ended the Cold War in '64, um, the people would have been wow, right? And all of that money we spent on all those bombs and airplanes and stuff for assured mutual destruction. Could have gone into healthcare, could have gone into education, could have gone into the infrastructure, right? Which, what happened to, I'm a builder, I'm Bob the Builder, and my name's Carrot Head, you know, and I can really build things. He hasn't even finished building the wall. Parts of it have fallen down already, right? So, we would have had a different world, right? And we were already out in the solar system, and everyone could have, got on, Scotty, beam me up, right? And we would have already had, the replicator, because in Brookhaven they've already been, been fooling around with that kind of technology since the '50s, right? So the world did a change in 1947 with the authorization of the National Security Act. I brought on the CIA, NSA, all the alphabet city guys, right? And NASA was the front for the already existing space fleet that was out there. When people said, I saw this flying thing and it looked like a big cigar. And what it was the Navy's submarines that they just stuck anti-grav units on them. And because the submarine was designed to go underwater and be, watertight and survive tremendous pressures, where that's the same kind of environment in outer space, but outer space is a lot more benign than the ocean is, right? So if you want a thing to stick some anti-gravity gizmos on, a submarine's a perfect thing. Hey, we're already making them. So stick some of those things and boom. So it can fly, zing, into space and go, ridiculously fast and turn on a dime. This has its own inertia inside of the gravel bubble, and it has its own gravity. So you go out there with a 0G, people can still walk around, So this is just a story I'm telling you now, right? So Kennedy didn't get shot. He would have ended the Cold War. Pretty much, and because that kind of competition is a thing that still to this day ferments conflicts around the world. It would have made us not have to have oil, coal, and rip minerals out of the ground. It would have changed our economy from one of a commerce of consumption to just the dynamic of abundance. And we wouldn't have to have a commerce, right? We wouldn't even need money because there's enough for everybody, right? And people would get involved in things that would float their boat, right? And we could build a life rather than having a job, right? Rather than having a career where you have to save for your retirement. No, everyone's taken care of. We all do what we want and what makes us feel our best. All the things I ever did in my life, all the careers I had were motivated because I enjoy, I was interested in them. Right, for 50 years, I was an electrician mostly. Even when I was, in universities, I still worked. When I was at Cornell, I still was working as an electrician. Um, when I was at UNC, I was always working kind of, oh, look at this. You're doing this. I mean, I can help you, right? When I was at Duke, I was working. I worked for the Seal Corporation building, sensory deprivation tanks, And these were just things I was interested in. I had the experience because what is education? You look at the word in Latin root of education, and it's to understand through experience, not through a textbook and taking an exam, getting a notification that you've done so many hours at doing something, so you must know something about it. No, doing it, making mistakes, and then finding how to fix those mistakes. That's how you learn. That's how you get experience. That's an education, right? And that's why our colleges is such a scam because it's basically a prison. We are a prison planet. Universities today are prisons because, back in the day, in the early days, in the 60s and 70s and early 80s, when I hung out in universities, so I worked in them and I wasn't constrained by, I wasn't like, an adjunct or I wasn't a, what do you call them? Interns, or I wasn't a, what do they call those guys? When you're not a PhD, but you're going for your degree, you are there's a word for that. Oh, it'll come to me. But anyway, I was a consultant. So I got paid. I didn't get paid. I wasn't getting paid by the university. I was getting paid by somebody like Brookings or the Ford Foundation or the Council on Foreign Relations or the Trilateral Commission or somebody like that was paying my salary. Oh, I get the check from over there. But they were doing that study at a university. And the university was getting a lot of money from those guys, too. So I was their representative at these people's university. And I could pretty much, and I had a project to do, and I was doing it within the constructs and constraints of their university using their facilities. And so pretty much they can never tell me what to do, right? They didn't pay me any money. Those guys are paying money. And those guys are paying the school a lot of money. So the people at the top were happy to see me there, would let me do whatever the heck I wanted. And so the people who were in the middle management and who like ran the departments and who were the tenured professors would really hate me because I could do whatever the heck I wanted. I could sleep in, I could do whatever, I could wear my pajamas, whatever. It didn't matter. I didn't care about them. I didn't even fight them or because all those tenured professors like, and they'd always, what are you publishing? I said, well, I'm publishing something that this guy's paying me 30 grand to write. You're just publishing to publish so you can say that you published, It's all right. And I'd be studying something. Those guys would keep around and what are you doing? How are you doing it? What are you finding? And I would show, and I'd be totally open with them. When you go into these guys' offices, they might hide everything. And so I'd say, what do you think? And they basically would go, first time, so I'm not going to tell you what I think. You just write it down and take credit for it. And then they would look at it and go, well, I would never say this. You're totally wrong because, my textbook says that. I said, well, that's so full of shit. You got to be kidding me. Where's your research? Where's your published, Anyway, so my stay in those universities, so the people at the super top thought I was kind of cool. They were happy to see me. I was making them money. My bosses were happy that I was there because I was getting more out of what they wanted than if they hired the tenured professors, because those guys were just given the textbook. They wanted me to look at it, to get the outside, the overstanding of what it is. Not the understanding. All the tenured professors were understanding, meaning somebody was stepping on their neck. So I did that for between the late 60s and the early 80s. And, but all the time I was being an electrician, I was being an artist, I was living, I was doing, I was involved. And that was the other thing. I would go into a town and be there 3 or 4 months, and I was the dude. And these professors had been there 15 years and no one even knew they existed because they were hiding in their little offices. And I was just having a good old time. And so that is what the truck driver was basically saying when he said life is about experience. It's about understanding yourself through your actions and taking responsibility and going for the gusto, because you're really here to ascend your soul, and that's the evolution, not what morons like Elon Musk and Bill Gates, think, oh, the next evolutionary trend of humanity is transhumanism. No, that is a cell. You think your body is a cell? You think you're a mud puppet or an ugly bag of water? Man, just wait till you become transhumanized, when you're plugged into the internet. Ouch. Ouch, 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 ouch. You really want that? I don't think you would. Anyway, so I was going to do a live chat, and no one's chatting, right? Let's see. Does the chat thing even work? That's it. Boop, boop, boop. Yep, it works. So why don't you two chat? Say something. Come on. I've just said a bunch of bullshit. You should have some kind of comment about it. Bullshite. Excuse me. Bullpucky. And yes, this is a show for grown-ups. Mm-hmm. And it's midnight here, Eastern Standard Time, so there shouldn't be any children watching this thing. Anyway, so what's your take on duality, right? Duality. Where's my pen? There it is. So tomorrow morning show is going to be a continuation of this. What is duality? And you really have to watch out for watching too much TV or too much internet or too much on any of these digital platforms, because they are so designed just to worm their way into your psyche, and so I try to read, because man, I can turn on the TV and 3 hours later I go, wow, I only want to watch one episode of Perry Mason, and I've just ended up watching 2 hours of infomercial about sanitary napkins. So or depends. I don't know. 59 minutes and 7 seconds. So unless somebody says something, I'm out of here at 60 minutes and 6 seconds, which is going to be pretty soon now. If nobody wants to say anything, I've just said a whole bunch of stuff that you can make any kind of comment on. And if you can't make a comment now here on the link, I would love it if you guys started commenting on the comment section at the bottom of this. Right? And remember, start going on the channel, and I must have at least 1,000 shows by now, right? I've been doing 2 a day now for a while, and I've been pretty much doing one every day. So anyway, oh, now I'm down to one. Okay, there it is. 1 minute, 11 seconds. Okay, so comment, subscribe, give me a thumbs up. Get a hold of me at the dude awake 42 at Gmail. You know, let's get some more subscribers. Let's hit that bell, drive that dog, get a little drunk, you end up in the supermarket. So anyway, I love you guys. You know, I'll see you in the morning. You know, I usually wake up with sun up around 7ish. I'm probably going to go to bed relatively soon. And I love you. Stay well. Be good. No one wants to say anything. So I'm out of here. Whoops. Hit the wrong button there. Oops. There we go.